Sure, we have plenty of Mark Jenkin heads like in the audience who know a little bit about your Jenkin heads.
Yeah,
she might match. Who know about your specific process as a writer director. But I'm going to go for the boring question. If you could talk us through how you specifically like to make films.
Yeah, on the formal level.
On the formal level.
Yeah,
please.
so we, I work with a 16mm Bolex clockwork camera, and I operate the camera myself. We shoot everything silently, no location sound at all, including dialogue. I mean, to get very detailed, I shoot 2 takes most of the time, sometimes 3. We might get onto that a little bit later. Yeah, and I don't shoot coverage. I don't shoot big wide shots, as you probably saw. I mean, there's some wide shots when they're needed, but I don't. You know, I shoot the scenes the shots in my head that I see when I'm writing it, and then create the sort of montage in the edit, and then do all of the sound at that time as well. So the actors one by one come in and voice their dialogue, and I build up the sound design, and also I create the score as well.
Yeah, so calling you writer director, I'm giving you the short shrift there, I think. You wear a lot of hats.
I do, but I should say, you know, I get a lot of attention for doing a lot of the work on the film, which is fine.
As you should, yeah.
But I do work with a very strong group of collaborators who I couldn't make the film without, you know, and I mean, the visible collaborators are here, and the rest of the cast. But there's a lot of people behind the camera who work with me who I would never be able to make any films without their input.
Absolutely. And then I want to come on to you guys. So with this way of working, and I believe with the Bolex, it needs to be wound every 30-ish?
27 seconds.
Okay, every 27 seconds. So being completely ignorant, I don't know how Bolex works. Every 27 seconds, are you freezing? How does that work for you guys on set in terms of your flow as actors? What's that like?
Well, unless there was very rarely there'd be a wee electric monitor to help it go around, but there's barely happening for the stunt sequences. But no, basically we just run the scenes as normal, and then you could always hear the camera turning. There'd be a film, and then it would stop, and Mark would say, "Hey," and we would wait, and we'd go, "Right, go back 2 lines," and then we'd continue. And that was kind of the way that it altered it, which of course is unique, but you know, at the end of the day, it's in a way, you know, you're always aware of that you're inside of a kind of fictional bubble. I guess it's like doing a play or something. There'll be an awareness of the audience, and there was a technical awareness that was stop, go back, and then we just carried running through.
How long does it take to wind up the Bolex? Is it 27 seconds as well?
No. 10 seconds. I mean, it depends how quick.
At the beginning of the shoot, you were like, Well, by the end, you were more like.
Well, I would just also explain something. Well, and sometimes if I wanted a bit of time just to think,
that's what
I'd go quite very slow. It's like when I would change the roll of the film. I can change a roll of film in 2 minutes, but sometimes if I just needed to be on my own, it could take
20 minutes.
But just to explain what George was saying about the motor on the side of the camera, because we were doing the driving scene where you try and escape in the pickup truck, and that was the 2 of us. So you were strapped into the driver's seat, and I was strapped into the passenger seat, but wedged in against the dashboard facing the other way, remember? And you were absolutely ragging and it was all insured, and the road was closed and everything. But it was I remember the adrenaline in the cab was pretty overwhelming, and you were absolutely ragging it, and I was sat there trying to film it like that. And then the camera needed winding, and I just wound it so quick that I overwound it and broke the spring. And you were like, "What's happened?" I said, "I broke the camera." And this is the camera that I shot Bait, Ennis Main, and 3/4 of this film on. And I remember you stopped and you did a 3-point turn in the lane, and then we drove back to the unit base. And I think there'd been somebody on the back of the truck who'd radioed back to the unit base saying the camera's broken. So by the time we got back, you pulled up in the truck and everybody was just stood in silence, and I got out and like walked, and it was even raining, and I remember walking through and everybody moved out of the way, and then I put the camera on the floor and sort of knelt over it, and people were coming up and like putting their hand on my shoulder, and we had 3 other cameras that we could have used, so it hadn't scuppered the film, but it was like I think everybody knew it was a big moment.
That's your camera that you made 2 other films on. So
it's been through everything with me, that camera.
Did you bury it?
No, I chatted to it, ate it, and I decided to eat it. Yeah, and I did. I genuinely did sort of have talk to it. This has been filmed, isn't it? And I thought I'm going to put it on the shelf and retire it, because I was like, well, you've done your work, but then. And then I remember the week we filmed in the studio for the below deck boat sequences. I had a motor and put the motor on it then, and we sort of
gave it a pacemaker, basically.
Yeah, I gave it a pacemaker, and it came back out. And I just remember walking back out, and everybody was like, "It's back."
The motor was good. You could do like a minute and a half. I remember asking
but we didn't do that though, did we?
No, 27 seconds.
We had
done that the whole
option.
time. But there is something for you, like the tangible that is part of your process of the winding up. Right?
What? Yeah, and I don't want to.
For you as an artist, but as an artist, and I know you don't mind saying it, but as an artist, that is something for you.
I'm fine with artists. No, but I also think. Yeah, there's something pure about it, not having the motor. Because then it's like, do you remember then the motor started breaking?
Oh, I don't
do you remember that in the boat? It just kept cutting out, and then, and it's batteries and wires. The thing about the Bolex is it's such a pure, beautiful thing. Perfect piece of engineering that once you start adding things onto it, the purity's gone.
Yeah.
Is there a purity in fewer takes, you think, that you kind of live by as a director? And how do you feel about that?
No. I like more takes.
Yeah?
Most I ever got was 3, and that was a lot of bargaining.
3 takes Turner.
I only used the first one, though.
I was talking about this last night, saying that sometimes, and I made a joke out of it. I said that you would quite often you'd have an idea and ask for a 3rd take, and I would say, yeah, you can have the 3rd take. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come, like, I'm going to vary what I'm doing if you're going to do a 3rd take. So I'll maybe bring the camera back away from you a little bit, and I get it back far enough that...
I was out of shot.
Well, no. No, so that the camera was out of earshot. So I'd say action and not run it.
Right.
But that isn't true. I think I did that once.
Best work.
But
not recorded.
To be fair, most of your 3rd takes are in the film, because you knew the character. And I know you weren't saying it arbitrarily. I remember one night messaging you, because you weren't in. George, you were on set, and it was the shot where you first go back in time and you look up at the pub and you realise the pub is lively. And so it's a shot at the front of the pub, and George has to step into the shot and walk across the road and go into the pub. So it's like a 10-second shot of the back of George's head. And I remember, and I thought, well, I'll do 2 takes. I'll do 1, and then I'll do a technical safety. So you did the first one, and when you did the first one, the camera made a funny noise. So I thought, oh, well, I'll do the 2nd take. So then I did the 2nd take, and I thought, well, that was good. But actually, if the first one's not right, I've only got 1 take. So I'll do another take. I did another take, and the extra stepped out at the wrong time. So then I thought I'd do another take. I did a 4th take.
Wait. You got 4 takes? I got 4
No, you don't. I messaged you that night.
And you said you got 4
I said, you won't believe this, but I did 7 takes at the back of George's head. And you said, are you fucking kidding me?
What a living.
You can't be playing favourites.
One of the things actually that I want to say is that the Bolex is one thing, but the way that you work on the fly was another, and actually that winding up and taking your time because you were thinking about what to do. And there were moments where you had your notepad and you write, right, let me work this out, and that was an interesting part of your process.
Do you remember the night where I couldn't work it out?
Yeah, it was about 2 hours.
Yeah.
But you did work it out, and that was...
What were you trying to work out?
Well, we were shooting the fishing sequences, and all of the fishing sequences at sea were not filmed at sea. They were filmed in the harbour at Hale, near where we live. And the boat was tied up against the wall. Mm-hmm. and to replicate the fishing. So the guys were heaving the net over the stern of the boat, but then the boat was being hooked onto a cable which was attached to a speedboat, which would speed out of the harbour and drag the net away from the stern of the boat. And there was a little fleet of jet skis just out of shot, which were pushing water past the boat. So everything's moving except for the boat. This is the magic of cinema now dead.
But don't mention the Asda in the background.
Your oven in there. Asda blocker. Sometimes
Asda?
Cal was staged on the deck of the boat to block out the huge Asda.
Why do you want me to stand there, Mark? The Asda sign there.
Yeah, but so I was shooting everything over one side of the boat for George's stuff, and then we kind of had to reset and try and get Cal's stuff, which was quite compromised by the position where the boat was against the wall. And so each night was just sort of filming the same thing over and over again. And I was thinking, well, I need to do that because the fishing stuff needs to be repetitive. But when you're shooting, you just think, this is madness. We're just doing the same thing over and over again. And I thought, right, I'm gonna try and work out a different way of shooting it. So we stood there, and these two guys are ready to go, sat on the stern of the boat. And I was thinking, and it was just like in my mind. And I just remember handing the camera to you, going, I don't know what I'm doing. I just climbed up the ladder back onto the quay, and I remember as I was walking up, seeing you two sort of looking up at me, and George, you were kind of looking at the camera. And I was like, and if you can think how to do it, just shoot something. And I just went and sat in a little tent on the quay for a little while, and then came back and said, yeah, I've got it now. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
I'm holding the camera going, I don't know what I'm doing.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, actually, it was Callum, you said in the interview that fishermen are like the last of the hunters, which I hadn't considered, but yeah, they are, in the West anyway. And what was it like kind of learning that trade? And I suppose because both of your characters were like new to it, how far did that training go?
My character had to learn more, which was frustrating. We had this guy called Lee, who actually you watched his show and you based your accent off of.
Yeah.
We used his boat, and it was just the lifestyle of the fishermen and then the brutality of it, and not knowing. They really don't know when they go out, they say goodbye to their families. One, they don't know if they're going to come back, which is a very serious thing. And two, they don't know if they're going to find anything. They don't know if they're going to come back and be able to sell these fish, and they don't know what the market's going to be like the next day when they come back. If everyone's caught, give me a fish, mackerel, then the market goes down, and so it's really a strange life, and it is like the last of the hunters. And then there's the brutality of it too. Lee, our guy, one day came in with a massive lip. You said, what happened to you? And you go, argument. And that was it. So what was the argument about? Just out there. And that was it. And I think there's something really feral about that and fascinating.
With a lot of films that have like a time jump, the aesthetic or the camera changes, and to make a really kind of marked, we are in a different place now. But it feels a lot more subtle in this one, down to production design. Yeah,
well, I should say that our brilliant production designer is here, Flo Hickson. She is, yeah. So very, very early on, well, I was asked, is the aesthetic of the way it's filmed going to change? Is the color palette going to change in terms of the way the film is shot and color timed? And I was always like, no, the format is kind of neutral. Once it's set, it stays like that, whatever time it is. Because the thing is, my camera is like the same age as me. It's like made in 1976. It shoots 16mm color neg, which hasn't really changed for a long time. So the format is kind of already out of time. It's not tied to the present day, and it's not tied to the 90s. It was kind of out of date in the 90s, really. So that would have been quite anachronistic to change it, and it could have gone back into black and white or all of that kind of stuff. I don't really like that kind of. I think it's far too surface. So the conversation was really with myself and Flo and her team that the colour palette would be changed in the production design and not in the way that the film is shot. So, and also then you're kind of blurring the lines a little bit as well. Although there's a distinct time change and it never reverts back, it still kind of feels like in some ways somebody, like the Richards house kind of looks the same in both ages, where other places do transform, and that's just through the production design.
Yeah. I mean, I think I really kind of, I don't want to say obvious, but really stood out to me is you see, it's the post office turns into the food bank, or the food bank has turned back into the post office, depending on which way now. And I think lots of people come away with different feelings or takes on the film. For me, I think it's like a really strong commentary on like the place of just the worker and how the worker is anonymised, I suppose, in our society. And you can tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree with that.
No, I would never tell you if you were barking up the wrong tree. You can bark
Welcome
up
to
whatever
our
tree you
world.
want.
Yeah.
We asked him about 10 different times, is this theory true? Is that theory true?
What? Yeah.
I like your answer, which is could be.
All trees are there to be barked up. It's kind of the motto that I live by. Yeah.
You just made it up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll ask George and Callum then. What did you...
All trees are there to be
all
barked up.
choices to be barked up. Thank you. No, I suppose what is your kind of take? What do you think of it as like, I was in like a time travel movie, as straight down the line as that, or do you?
No, because that's almost like a genre unto
Yeah.
itself. We're just in this movie, and that sounds, I don't know, it's silly, but the reason to be part of it was Mark, and if there was a genre, it's a Mark Jenkin film, and that's what we wanted to be part of. And that was everything to me.
Sure. Cal?
Well, we want it to be part of Mark Jenkins. I think that it's the amazing thing about this, the script actually, just to go to the script, because when I first read the script, first off, knowing a Mark Jenkins movie and what that looked like, it felt like a poem, reading it, and it really seeped off the page, and you could feel it, and you could see it, and you could smell it, and I think one day you should release the script. I think that'd be fascinating for people to see it and read it. And there's so many different points that this movie could start. It could start when we're already working on the boat, and there's this circular thing where it's you don't know if you're in the beginning or the middle of a nightmare or you're beginning of a dream, and that's the thing that I really loved about the script and the film.
Potentially sticking with the script in the story a little bit, so you developed it with Mary.
That's it.
Before I open up to the audience, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you and Mary worked together on developing this story.
I was getting ready to shoot Ennis Main in that spring of 2020 when the lockdown happened, and I sort of talked about this before and joked about it, that I tended until that point to have one idea every 3 years, and that was fine because I was making one film every 3 years, and then the pandemic threw up this delay in Ennis Main, and I had to write something, an extra thing, and all I had was that initial kernel of an idea that it was just stuck. And Mary by saying, what if not everybody is surprised that the boat returns, that just opened the whole thing up. And then, and we did just kind of bat the ideas backwards and forwards just for one night. And just before we were going to go to sleep, Mary said, "Are you going to write any of this down?" And I said, "No, let's not write it down, because if it's a good idea, it'll be with us in the morning." And then we woke up in the morning, we didn't talk about it, we went and did all the lockdown stuff that we were doing, and then in the evening we sat down to have tea, and I said, "I've been thinking about that idea all day," and she said she had as well, and that was the point where I knew I had to sit down and write it. Because my ideas are sometimes, a lot of the time, quite rare. When they come to me, sometimes I think, is this a good idea or is it a new idea? And that's very different, because a new idea can just be a shit idea in disguise that tricks you if you haven't got a lot of ideas. So by resting on it the next day, and also Mary's judgment of things is absolutely impeccable, and sometimes she'll say something that I don't agree with, And then a few days later, I realised that she was right, and I was being fooled by a shit idea disguised as a new idea, and she saw through the newness of it and said and pointed out that it was shit.
Thank you, Mary, for your discernment.
Yeah, I think so. And me and Denzel have talked about this quite a lot. That I think coming from Cornwall, there is that link to the supernatural, which is very linked to the past, an obsession with the past, which I think runs through all the Celtic nations. That there's a kind of obsession with the past, and I think, and Denzel said this to me, and I think about it a lot. It's to do with being defeated nations. That if you're a defeated nation, what you do is you dwell on the past and you think about the past because it really informs where you are in the present. It also means that your truth that you're left with and the bits that you're left with, having suffered a defeat, historically a long way back in time, those bits of the culture that you're left with, they become incredibly precious, and you bury them and protect them in myths and stories, which quite often do have a supernatural element, but they're buried in the stories because the stories will last forever, and that's how you keep these things alive. So I do think there's I think there's something in that, and I think that's it's common for probably a lot of cultures, but I certainly feel that where I'm from. No, it's the end. I'm off to Hollywood.
Asked and answered.
No, sorry. To answer your question, there's a couple of feature-length films that I made before Bait, which were kind of never released and really never exhibited. I mean, we had this conversation. I know the BFI and BAFTA had this conversation when I was nominated for the BAFTA debut. But because the films were never released and never shown, really, Bait officially is my debut. But I'd been working for 20 years on films before Bait made me an overnight success. In answer to your question about Cornwall, myself and Denzel and Denzel's production company Bassena, Denzel's got lots of things in development, but 4 things with me, and they've all got some kind of link to Cornwall. I've just been in the States on a research trip writing a road movie over there. Did a 3,000-mile round trip from upstate New York to Wisconsin for something I'm writing over there. And actually, when I got back to New York, I met with a friend of mine who works in the industry in New York, who said to me, "So what are you doing here?" And I said, I'm writing a film. And he said, "Oh, great, you're making a film over here now." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What?" He said, "That's really exciting." I said, "Yeah, it's great." He said, "So what, what's it about?" And I said, "Well, it's about this Cornish woman." And he was like, So I think the only one that isn't linked to Cornwall is I don't know, I probably can't talk about it, but it's not set in Cornwall, but it's all going to be filmed in Cornwall. Yeah, I don't know, because it's the only way I work, so I've got nothing to compare it to. So it's only when I get into this situation and I'm asked questions like this where I ever kind of consider it. But I always go back to what happened when Bait was premiered in Berlin, where somebody in the very first screening, in the first Q&A, pointed out the similarity between the form and the content, and they said it was one of those Q&As where somebody gets up and asks a question that isn't a question but is a statement, and which I don't mind. I quite like those. And he said it's very interesting that you're using a dying format to communicate a story about a dying way of life. And I said, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." And the following night at the Q&A, somebody asked, what was your intention with this film? And I said, well, I was very keen to use a dying format to communicate a story about a dying way of life. So your question may well be an answer in a Q&A over the weekend. But I think it is all of the limitations of the film form. You know, the fact that we don't have much footage, we don't have a lot of film, means that
Sure.
everything's very considered in the way that we shoot it. So it's it's very planned out. But then at other times there's things that are completely instinctive, where we'll just shoot something because it's just there, you know. And I know like Flo and her department would dress the sets with props that are maybe meant to be in the background out of focus, and I wander in with my camera and see something, think, oh, that's great, and suddenly, you know, it's a massive close-up with some significance within the film that I work out during the editing, or gets told to me by a critic or an audience member. But there's some things that are just out of the limitations of the fact that I'm operating the camera and directing the film, that sometimes I will just go off to have a moment by myself, and I'll go off and just film stuff, not because I want to film it, but just because I need a moment to kind of gather my thoughts. And a lot of those things end up being really prominent in the film. So I don't really know the sense of it particularly. I just got this way of working that I really love, and so far the form and the content seem to kind of marry up quite well.
Which one came first?
Yeah, I literally have never thought about that. I don't know. I mean, in broad terms, I suppose I wanted to say something before I had the mechanics to say it, you know. I suppose as a kid I used to write stories about things, so I suppose I was looking for the right form for the right content. But yeah, definitely, you know, I knew that the way we worked, I was very confident that we could create these huge kind of, relatively big set pieces within the film with the way that we were shooting, you know, even down to not recording location sound. Like Cal said, we shot all of the fishing sequences in the shadow of a huge Asda, and we couldn't do that shooting in a more conventional way. You know, if we were shooting wide shots or even just recording location sound, the Asda would have featured. And in fact, the only way the Asda featured was that the sign on the end of the shot was so bright that at times it was acting as a fill light, which was quite handy.
Yeah, I think it does, in the sense that you're always kind of aiming at the target with like your interpretation of a scene or what you want to do. And I guess it focuses that all the more, where you know, there's not going to be a kind of warm-up period. It will be, if it's one, it's done. So yeah, it certainly kind of like motivates an accuracy for what you're going for. But then in a sense, you're always kind of gunning for that anyhow, I think, whatever form, you know, the filmmaking takes.
Yeah, I think that if you get 5 takes, my sort of philosophy is, these are for me, and here's one you're actually going to use, because there's an exploration of the character. And if you go bigger, I find if I go bigger on the first ones, there'll be, through a filter, resonance of the first one in the more still one that will be taken on by the director. And I think that's true across everything I do. You know, not just 2 takes or 3 takes, but if there's 10, normally, if I don't warm up or go for it, then I feel myself holding back, and I know there's more, but I got to go looking for it before I find the real thing. That makes sense. Not, he was bubbly and brown-haired and likes rowing. I don't know. Over descriptive, I think, is always a warning sign. This, in particular, was so matter of fact that then you can imprint your experience on your ideas onto it, and I think that filters through to the film too. You know, it's so present that you're present, and everyone will have their own experience with this film. So anything that's over descriptive, I would say, is a red flag.
And it's hard because I think what chimes with any individual person will be individual to that person. So I wouldn't. I say this as an actor, not as a writer, but like I imagine I wouldn't curtail your writing to try and suit anyone else. Just do what speaks to you, and that will be the best version of it.
Originally, because I thought if it's 93, the jukebox in a Cornish pub has probably got a little bit of a lag in terms of the music. So I thought maybe 90, 91, 89 possibly. So I love all the music from around that era. So the first track I thought of, this is the genius of my writing, I thought Unbelievable by EMF. I didn't even tell Mary that, but she would have said straight away, no. It's too on the nose. So the other two tracks, one was Perfume by the Paris Angels that I wanted. And then what we used was Big by the New Fast Automatic Daffodils. And we were looking at both, weren't we? And what we managed to get hold of was the New Fads gave us a demo that they own the rights to for Big, and so we went with that. It could have been either of those two tracks, but Big is that was a huge. I was gonna say Big. It was a huge song for me at that time. And actually, the way I heard that song originally was on a compilation tape called Happy Days, which my copy of Happy Days is featured in Nick's bedroom. It's one of the tapes. The tape that's open with the little bag of pills on it. That's the actual tape where I originally discovered that song. So yeah, it was early. Really, it was key to have a specific song in there, and it was kind of like it's like sort of like a house beat that even if you don't know the song, it kind of sounds like that era if you know anything about that era. But then if you do know it's the New Fads, then it's a bit of a geeky moment for people to recognize that track.
I'd say that usually I much prefer, at least with film. I don't. I would prefer not to do ADR because I always think that there's a truth in the moment of the doing that is best. But that said, like this is such a particular process, and it was laid out from the very beginning. There will be no sound on set, so there was no issue whatsoever because you went, right, well, this is how we're working on this one. In the same way that it'll be 27 seconds, probably one take. We're going to shoot certain scenes weeks apart because of harbour locations, and there'll be no sound on set. So it didn't change anything about I used the whole shoot to practice my Cornish accent. I was doing my Cornish accent the whole time, even though there was no sound recorded. And then 3 months later, we came to do the lines. But so to answer your question, it wasn't too much of an issue because it was always totally upfront that was the process specific to this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hate ADR. It's probably my least favorite part of the process because I feel basically what George said. Like I feel like I'm a purist, and in the moment you're in a certain mind state, and you can release something, and then 6 months later they're like, "Oh, can you just do that line again?" And the same, and it's impossible. I can hear the studio, and they're like, "No, we'll make it work." Should be like, I'm not sure you can. But with this, exactly the same as what George said, it was up front that this was part of the process. And I think that you have to let go of certain things to be a part of certain things. And yeah, I mean, imagine a Mark Jenkin movie with sound done on a day. It'd be horrible.
Awful business. Awful. Can I just add something to that? All of the cast came back in one by one, all on their own, all separately to record the dialogue. George came in first, so I had a rough cut of the film. By October, you came in, and you did your dialogue first, and then everybody else came in one by one. Cal, you came in last because your schedule was quite nuts. And so by the time you came in, the film was all kind of half mixed. And with Ian Wilson, who's the supervising sound editor I work with, who records the dialogue and mixes the film. We'd done a kind of almost finished version of the film with everybody's voices in, except for Cal's voice. And so the character of Liam, I had voiced.
There is a version of this movie where Mark voices everyone.
Yeah. Which the BFI are refusing to release.
On the DVD extras.
But I remember, and your voice is lower than mine. I did a kind of cod impression of no, and then I pitch shift it down a semitone. So it was great because when I was working, it didn't sound like me anymore. It was somebody. It sounded human, but it sounded like somebody else's voice. And so I thought, when you came down to do that final voicing session, I thought the film was 99% complete. Sent to Denzel and Mary at the time, said, just got to get Cal in. He's going to do a day. He's going to drop the dialogue in, and then the film's finished. And you came in and you did the dialogue, and then we watched it back, and the whole film had changed by that one last piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It was not 99% complete without your voice. It was nowhere near complete. And I remember me and Mary watching a bit of it going, by adding your voice, it changed your performance.
Yeah.
It changed everything. And it was like, this is amazing because I don't understand how this has happened. I don't get it. I don't understand how film works. I don't understand how you put two pictures together and add some sound. Suddenly the whole thing just becomes this immense transcendent art form. And it was really exciting. It was like, yeah, I don't get this. This is witchcraft. This is magic. This is like the thing that,
It's nothing to do with me. And he was saying that. And I thought, I'm a genius. But I wasn't.
No, I mean, it literally could have been any member of the cast. But
I was like, I'm amazing.
it was all you.
No. But I think
And
that's...
you.
No. Yeah. Thanks to Cal.
Yeah, thanks to Cal.
You're welcome.
And that's the magic of the movie.
That's why we've got to keep making them, because we don't know how they work.
Exactly. And with that, that's us for the evening, guys. Thank you so much for coming out. Rosie Nevada.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.